This is the Goodbye Summer Cinema Concert. Sounds like they're singing the La La Land soundtrack. Yeah. Here in the Gwanghwamun Plaza. Samcheongdong Art Center.
Someday as I sing my song, I'll smoke a kitty come along. There are things you used to once and gone and go. 9 years are waiting for days and tasting all the lights that shine. And when they let you down, you get up off the ground. 'Cause morning rolls around and it's another day of sun. It's another day of sun. 네, 감사합니다. 감사합니다. 이거 정말 좋죠? 네, 감사합니다.
That's not a bad crowd for a Thursday
저희
night.
벌써 마지막 곡을 앞두고 있는데요. 이제 이번 주제가 영화 여름 음악이거든요. 그래서 저희가 여름 하면 딱 시원하고 청량한 얘기
There's King Sejong, and the person whose face is on the 10,000 won note, the most common, most frequently used Korean bill, and the overseer of the creation of Hangul, the Korean alphabet, the Korean lettering system. And next to that, the American Embassy in Korea. I still say the ugliest building in all of Seoul, or at least in downtown Seoul. There's the National Museum of Korean Contemporary History, telling the story of Korea's modern history, which is a very fraught, politically loaded history. If you're North American, imagine a museum of the residential schools or a slavery museum. Think about how hotly contested such a thing would be. That is how hotly contested South Korea's modern history is. Because the same leaders who are praised by the right as the genius engineers of Korea's modern prosperity are seen on the left as the dictatorial thugs. And interestingly, for a country whose democracy movement was so full of protests and demonstrations, well, now they've got signs that promise with Earth, time for action, live with Earth, live with us. Environmental messages, which is nice. About a minute ago, the signs were things like cheer up. which is incredibly insipid for a country that earned its democracy with blood and tear gas. Here we have I'm not sure if this is a protest or a cultural demonstration. Go over there, they're singing Moana in front of the Sejong Art Center. This part of Gwanghwamun Plaza I haven't explored yet. An archaeological dig site. One of the things, of course, about about an area that's been the capital as long as Seoul is push a shovel into the ground and you're likely to come across the ruins of an ancient building. I think I'll come back sometime and learn a little more about what this is, but I want to go home now. This is the Gwanghwamun Gate, which is the entrance to Gyeongbok Palace, the largest palace in Seoul. Seoul was the capital of Korea for 600 years. Looks like it's open tonight. It's not always open at night, but when it is, boy, it's great. However, it is also super crowded. Fun fact about Gyeongbok Palace. When Korea was colonized by the Japanese, one of the things that Japan did, just basically to stick a thumb in the eye of the traditional Korean thinkers, was they looked at I guess in English we use the Chinese term, we call it the feng shui. They looked at the feng shui of the area. I've talked about this before, how, for example, you should have a mountain directly behind a house for protection and a river directly in front for prosperity. They went through kind of the ley lines or the lines of energy or power all around the capital. And if you climb mountains in some areas of Seoul, even today, you will still see iron spikes hammered into some of the big rocks because iron was meant to disrupt the energy lines, the power lines, the lines of spiritual energy that made Seoul's palaces locations auspicious. Another thing that Japan did was they put a really ugly government administrative building right where this gate is, and they positioned it just a little bit off that center line from the peak of the mountain to the river in order, again, to just disrupt and spoil that energy flow that your feng shui is supposed to give you. So in the early 2000s, not long after I first came to Korea, they basically hid this entire gate behind blankets and construction scaffolds in order to rebuild the entire thing. Now, the dictator Park Chung-hee during the 60s and 70s, he was really, really good at using nationalism to rally people into compliance for his nation-building exercise. And one of the ways he did that was with the symbolism of patriotic symbols. So one thing that Park Chung-hee did is he rebuilt these palaces, but Korea didn't have the craftspeople, the wherewithal, the know-how, or in the numbers they needed to actually rebuild it in the traditional methods. So they put up a new palace and made it all out of poured cement. And beside one of the museums nearby, you can actually see remaining pieces of those poured cement palace gates. And they look the same. They look just like these ones, with all of the complex fancy eaves and things, but it's made out of cement, concrete in a mold, rather than exquisitely crafted wood. Exquisitely crafted wood. There has actually also been a scandal because the craftspeople who were given the task of restoring that gate were misappropriating or misallocating funds, probably lining their own pockets, because the big sign that said Gyeongbok Palace, that's in the dead center of that gate we were just looking at, after less than a year, a crack formed in it because the wood had not been properly treated. There was another gate nearby that was nearly totally destroyed by an arsonist in, I think, 2007 or 8. And that also, when it was rebuilt in the traditional methods with these traditional craftspeople, there were revelations, discovery of shoddy workmanship, inferior materials, or improperly built parts of the structure, leading to a big old investigation, including, if my memory serves correctly, and I'm just doing this from memory, so please forgive me if I'm wrong, it culminated in the suicide of one of the project overseers, as the shame was too great during all of those discoveries. So now we are walking on a little street that runs alongside the palace wall. Now the other Let's Take a Walk with Rob Laseo video is walking along the palace wall on the other side of Gyeongbok Palace. This time I'm walking on this side. This is a little road that I've walked many, many times. It's lined entirely with trees, and I love it. The trees turn pink in the spring. They turn all kinds of awesome colors in the fall, and they are great. And now we've got that song from La La Land stuck in my head. And I'll tell you, if I'm gonna have songs from a musical stuck in my head, probably a top 10 list that I would rather have stuck in my head than La La Land. City of Stars, we rarely overuse this theme. City of Stars, we should have spent a bit more time composing more melodies. Those are the actual correct words from the libretto of La La Land, I swear. Sometime in the future, all those combustion engines will be replaced by electric engines. And then the sound of cars passing is just going to be the hiss of tires on concrete. Wouldn't that be interesting? To make Seoul a greener city, there are some challenges. One of the main ones is that Seoul is very hilly. Now, I have said a few times on social media that Seoul is a great place for recreational biking, but not a good place for bicycle commuting. There are tons of beautiful trails along streams and riversides and stuff, but drivers in Seoul are not very good at sharing the road with cyclists. When I said that, for the sake of completeness, I should also say that my friend Richard, one of the smartest people I know, tells me that he was a bicycle commuter in Seoul for a few years. And he says cycling in Seoul as a commuter is perfectly safe if you just keep your head about you. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. So that is a point of data to include in your calculation. And it should be noted, Richard actually has commuted by bicycle where I haven't. So don't take my generalization with more weight than it deserves. Like that little alleyway there with the colored lights. I've always said the countryside is prettiest during the day. The city is prettiest at night. A little while ago, I took my old theater professor, Angela, up Bukak Mountain. And it was really cool to have her visit Korea 20-something years after I graduated. To get to go take a drive and talk a little about the downtown area I love. It has to get pretty late at night before it actually starts being, quiet on this little area, this little street here. I swear, I have taken walks along here when it was, and I swear not only on days when torrential rains were expected, or it was cold as sin, because it does get cold as sin around here. Another thing about this little street here, we're actually walking here towards Cheongwade, and I mentioned last video about how the new president of Korea moved the presidential offices away from this neighborhood. And one of the reasons that might have been a bad move is because this whole side street, if you notice, it's not the main street, the main thoroughfare that runs north-south in this neighborhood. It is an entire kind of extraneous, pretty, but also space-taking up street that serves, among other things, as a wonderful kind of outlet for a huge number of protesters if they want to send a message to the president. And when Yoon Suk-yeol moved to a new place, I haven't checked the layout of the area in Yongsan where his new offices are carefully, but infrastructure-wise, I'm pretty sure that the infrastructure of that neighborhood does not have a bunch of little side streets, choke points, blind alleys, spots where you can line up a few police buses and easily, efficiently contain 10,000 or 20,000 protesters without causing a massive traffic snarl that will go, 3 kilometers in every direction. I got near the new presidential compound, and it is pretty close to a 6-lane or an 8-lane highway. And if that 6-lane or 8-lane highway got stopped up with protesters, that entire district, and perhaps all the way to the tunnels through the mountain which connect northern Seoul from southern Seoul through bridges, perhaps all the way to those tunnels, could get snarled up in a traffic jam, where around here you've got to walk about a kilometer to the really big thoroughfare that you really don't want to block up. And as you get closer to the Blue House, the president's former residence, the streets get progressively kind of smaller and more suitable for siphoning off a few thousand demonstrators. And along the way, all of that urban planning also creates some really nice places for a walk. I think I'm going to stop here for this video. On my YouTube page, a commenter asked if I could walk through a garden next time. And there's a little park near here called Mugunghwadongsan, which is very close to the Blue House. It's actually a common muster point for tour bus groups that are about to do the Blue House tour. So my next video will be a little tour of that area. If you watch this whole thing, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it very much. Tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, do all of that awesome stuff. And I'll hope that you join me for the next one. Okay, bye now.